Welcome to the Primo's Musings podcast.
Good afternoon. How are you doing, Josh?
Doing good, Sri. Thanks for having me on.
All right. I think we are down to the last two in the college football playoff national championship. Huge showdown, epic showdown between Ohio State and Notre Dame. It's going to happen tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. So I think this first time I think you're going to see an 8 seed Ohio State playing against 7 seed Notre Dame. Both of them had impressive runs. So before we get to the actual matchup, let's quickly, maybe you can talk a little bit about how Ohio State got there. What do you think were the keys to their victory in each of their games? And then maybe we can also touch upon Notre Dame, and then we can quickly dive into key players in each of the teams that are going to make a major impact. So let's start off with your quick assessment of both the teams here.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, Ohio State, I feel like has been the story of the playoff. Coming into the playoff, they had a lot of doubters. I mean, and rightfully so. I mean, coming out against Michigan and as a 20 plus point favorite and dropping that game had seemingly everyone in the world doubting them, and including me. And as a Tennessee fan, started off with Tennessee getting their teeth kicked in by Ohio State, and so that definitely jolted them into this run. Did the same thing against Oregon in the Rose Bowl, just putting up points at will, using all of their receivers and Chip Kelly just really scheming up these defenses and seemingly have looked unstoppable. Texas seemed to slow them down a little bit in the semifinal game, but ended up still coming out on top. So really just too much talent, too many ways to attack you, whether it's through the air or through the ground with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. Just so many weapons, and Will Howard has finally really put it together and has them rolling. I mean, really the best. I feel like I've seen him play at the best time possible, really in his whole career. Starting out at Kansas State and then coming into Ohio State, and maybe took a little while for him to figure out the system, figure out how to really utilize his weapons, but he's really put it together at the right time, and it's hard to see them not winning the whole thing at this point, given the teams and the quality of teams that they've had to beat in order to get here. And then the other side, Notre Dame is certainly no slouch. I mean, they and similar storyline with dropping a game that they shouldn't have in Notre Dame's case much earlier on in the year to NIU, and got a lot of momentum going toward the end of the season. Really good run defense, and really just their defense overall. A great rushing offense with Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard to complement that, and they were able to beat up on some teams that I don't think people were really giving them much of a shot against, at least going into the playoffs. I know Georgia was a big there's a big asterisk there with Carson Beck getting hurt against Texas in the SEC championship game, but they really showed that they were able to hang physically with teams that in the past, when they had Brian Kelly as their head coach, that they seemed like there was a talent gap, and they seem to have closed that. I don't know if it'll be enough to beat Ohio State. I think they're currently 8.5 point underdog right now, so not getting a huge chance to beat Ohio State, which I don't know if there's any team that would have. I do think that Notre Dame is the second best team in the country. I mean, maybe there's an argument for Oregon if they didn't have to play Ohio State, but these are two certainly the most deserving teams. They've been tested throughout the playoffs, and they were ultimately able to make the plays that they needed to make, especially with Notre Dame coming down to the wire against Penn State to pull it out, and are rightfully in the position that they're in today.
Yeah, I think you had called it before when we did the preview show. You had actually said sneakily Notre Dame has a clear path to the national championship. I think you're right. I think, playing Indiana, playing obviously Georgia without Beck, and then playing against Penn State. I read a very interesting article about Notre Dame, and we'll get to the players as well. I think you covered the players. They call it the middle eight. I think it's an article I read in the Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago. So what that means is the last 4 minutes of the second quarter and the first 4 minutes of the third quarter. One of the things that Notre Dame has done really well is to actually do a very good job of scoring before the half and then they always get the ball after halftime. That's why they usually defer, and they actually double ups. And I think it happened in the Penn State game. They were down 10-3 going in. I think it also happened in the game that they played against Georgia. I think it was a matter of, I would say, like a matter of 54 seconds. They had
Hmm.
scored 17 points. So it was, I think, at the 3-all. The next thing you saw was a 23 score. And that's a very interesting article that I saw. And I think this is something very similar to what, being a Patriots fan, I know this thing. This is something that Belichick and Brady used to do all the time. They wanted to score, I think they didn't call it middle eight, they called it the middle four, which would be score the last 2 minutes and then score, come back in the second half and score, take the ball and then drive down the field. So Notre Dame definitely has that going. I think the key is, I think you called upon it, the Ohio State's offense is solid. I mean, they have, like you said, Will Howard is playing as good as he can. Jeremiah Smith could be right now potential first round pick, could be the number one pick if he goes to the NFL. Of course, Notre Dame, as you said, they started slow, but with Riley Leonard, a transfer from Duke, and then Jeremiah Love, the running back, I do think that Notre Dame, I think if they have to win this game, it has to be in the trenches, which is hold the ball, long drives, and eventually make sure you go and score a touchdown. And I think that's how Notre Dame is going to play it with their running game. Riley Leonard won't throw like literally about 200 yards. I don't see him throwing 200 yards. I think it's more, and he can run too. So I think it's going to be more Notre Dame running game versus Ohio State's defense. It remains to be seen if Ohio State can. I mean, Ohio State can score. You said Will Howard and Jeremy Smith. They can score anytime they want. It's just a question of how they. It's going to be a chess game. I think that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame. There's two very different style of offenses here, and you mentioned the middle eight. I think so much of that comes down to controlling the ball, time of possession. Notre Dame's going to want to slow this game down. That would ultimately favor them. Where if they have the ball like a long time, wear down Ohio State's defense. They definitely have the run game to get it done and ultimately keep the ball out of the hands of Will Howard and that explosive offense, keep their defense fresh, and limit those sort of explosive plays that Ohio State has seemingly gotten all throughout the playoffs. And I think they're very capable of getting that done. One of the storylines I remember going into the Tennessee and Ohio State game that they seem to have patched up recently is that the Ohio State's offensive line was pretty beat up going into the playoffs, and it seems like they have held their own. I mean, so much of that is it seems like they had the defense on their heels the whole time. And I think that's where Notre Dame ultimately needs to win on defense is, as you mentioned, I mean, it's the key to probably every game that you go into, but especially with this one, with as well as Notre Dame has played on defense and is how good Ohio State has been on offense. They have to win that battle up front. And if they don't, it's going to be hard for Notre Dame to pull off this upset. So slowing the game down, time of possession, establishing the run game, that's really going to be critical for Notre Dame to pull off this win. For Ohio State, they they are lightning in a bottle on offense. I mean, if they're able to do what they did against Oregon, against Tennessee, at times against Texas, going into the half with that screen pass that went all the way for a touchdown, just scoring quickly. Notre Dame cannot have that happen. They really need to control the time of possession, and I feel like that's really their only shot to win this game.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be very interesting. One thing that Notre Dame has been doing well. Obviously, they have their three-headed monster in terms of running the ball, and Riley can run too. I think he's got more than 800 yards in rushing this year. The offensive line is going to be the key against the Ohio State defense, and if they can do a good job of protecting Riley Leonard, able to I think like I said, the game is going to be won in the trenches, which is exactly what's going to happen for Notre Dame. I think if they can control the possession, I think they have a shot against Ohio State. I think right now everywhere you see it, I don't know what the line is right now. I haven't seen the line yet, but I think Ohio State is probably predicted to win.
Hmm.
I feel that the Notre Dame can pull off the upset. And Freeman, I know a lot of people have been talking about getting calls in the NFL, but I think he's very clear about it. He said he's not even going to be thinking about the NFL. So I feel that the coaching matters. Again, Ryan Day is good. I mean, I think right now the Ohio State fans are slowly off his back, but of course they'll never forgive him for Michigan. right now they've beaten the three top teams right now, right? And, I mean, they've beaten Tennessee, they've beaten Texas, and what's the third team?
In Oregon.
Oh, no, Oregon. Yeah. So I think the number one team. So how could I forget that? So they've right now they've played the strongest competition on their way to the final. But I think that's the way it's going to be. I think Notre Dame can pull off the upset, and I think I'm going to go with Notre Dame. I think as much as I think Ohio State will win, but I'm going to go with Notre Dame. And I think I want to hear your thoughts on.
Yeah, it's the line is I believe it's at 8.5 the last time I checked. But yeah, it's it's impossible to pay against Ohio State for me right now. I mean, they have so many ways. Like I said, the score they've looked unreal against. I mean, I don't know if I'd say higher level competition than Notre Dame. I don't know if you put Texas up against Notre Dame or Oregon up against Notre Dame. I can't say for certain if Notre Dame wins both those games. So I think that Ohio State has been battle tested. Not that Notre Dame hasn't, but Ohio State has been the most impressive team in the playoffs. I think that they're on a mission. I think that Ryan Day is hungry, and I I can't see them pulling Notre Dame pulling off this upset. So I'm gonna go with Ohio State. I don't think they're gonna score at will like they did against Oregon or Tennessee. But if I had to make a score prediction, I'll go. I'll say 28-18. I think they'll cover.
28-18. Okay. Okay. 28-18. Okay. I think I'm going to say Notre Dame 24-21. And I mean, 21 is pretty much giving um, Ohio State no credit for their high flying offense. But I think that's how, if they can play that way, and again, Notre Dame's defense is solid. If they can generate the pass rush, they can get a turnover or so. I think that will really put Ohio State on the back burner. And then I think I could see that upset brewing. And I know we're going to be watching it. Again, Ohio State actually leads the nation in scoring defense. I mean, they are 12.2, and Notre Dame is second, is 14.3. You're actually seeing two teams which are number one and number two in the nation. And that's why I said, when I went and said that the battle in the trenches would be crucial, that was my prediction for that. I think I'm calling it a very low scoring game, 24-21, Notre Dame. And I think Ohio State, I think I'm betting against Ohio State, which is not a good thing to do, which is not a smart thing to do, but I think I'll do that. So I think we that's the wrap on the college football playoff. But I know that we were watching some of the NFL, and we have two more games today. Just want to hear your initial thoughts on the Kansas City Texans game and then the upset of the Detroit Lions against the Commanders, which was like a track meet, like we call it, a video game, a Madden game that we saw last night. And give me your initial thoughts on the first game, the Texans and the Chiefs, and then we'll go to the next one.
Yeah, I'll start with the Chiefs win over the Texans. So that you've already heard, I believe it was like Will Anderson. You heard D'Amico Ryans coming out in his press conference and insinuating that the game was a bit lopsided in the way that it was called. I mean, I can't help but agree with him. I don't know if Roger Goodell will, and I'm sure fines are coming their way. I understand that you need to protect the quarterback, especially with a guy like Mahomes, but the quarterback slide, and I remember hearing about this. I believe Steve Young was talking about it on a podcast I was listening to. But the quarterback slide was originally brought into the NFL to give guys like Peyton Manning that had no business running with the ball a way out.
Tom Brady, too.
Yeah, Brady's same way. Just immobile quarterbacks that just so happen to be out in open space, and it saves them from getting absolutely lit up. And you've seen now these more mobile guys, and obviously there's guys that are more mobile than than Mahomes. I mean, you have Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels that are active threats in the run game. When you have Mahomes fishing to get a late hit or a late hit out of bounds, the quarterbacks are able to weaponize the penalties now, and that's not the way that the game that the slide was intended to be used for. So I really think they need to reevaluate if they're gonna protect quarterbacks in the way that they are. I mean that late hit on Mahomes just kind of dancing around for a while and then doing a last second slide, that was I mean, it was so last minute. There's no way you can expect a defender to be able to pull up in time. You saw like I think it was I don't know if they ended up calling like a hit to the head or a late a roughing the
Mhm.
passer penalty, but I mean those are two drastically, I think it was a 10-point final or 11 points, something like that. And those are huge momentum plays. I don't know if the Texans end up winning that game, but we were texting last night and the yards, the turnover battle, like everything seemed to point in the Texans winning that game, except for the penalties. And it's more than just those two calls, obviously, but neither team really impressed me. I'm still under the impression that Kansas City just takes whatever's thrown at them and they're able to find a way to win. So I'm still going to keep picking them to win the Super Bowl until they prove me wrong. But that was a bit frustrating of a game to watch. I don't know if you share a similar sentiment.
Absolutely. And this was not just me. And in fact, I was actually texting with not just you, but other fans of the different teams. And I think when you look at it, everybody, again, I'm not one to complain. I mean, I think, as a Patriots fan, I've seen a fair share of calls, for Brady or Manning. I've seen those things. And I remember after Manning lost, multiple AFC championship to Brady, they changed the rules on how they, because they felt that the Patriots DBs were mugging the receivers and they changed some of those things. But again, I've also seen, but then I also sent a friend of mine who's a big time Chiefs fan of like a 5 minute clip of Brady getting hit with no penalties called in any of those hits. And I think I should share it with you. But again, Brady did get his fair share. But what has happened, and I think it boggles my mind that the NFL is the only sport, I don't know if other major sports, that doesn't have full-time officials. And this is a multi-billion-dollar sport. It's bigger than all the other sports, and I don't know why the NFL would not go to that. The second part of it is that I do think that this is something that Belichick had brought many, many years ago, and he continues to do that. Is that some of these plays should be reviewed. I mean, especially the 15-yard penalties, the pass interference penalties should be reviewed.
Yep.
And it was not just the two 15-yard penalty, the Mahomes slide, and then there was another flopping thing, and then there was the earlier in the first half. That was on a third down, and that actually the drive continued, and they scored the points. So there was almost like a 10-point shift that you saw in the game, and that when you see the official again, there's no doubt in my mind that Mahomes and Kelsey are first ballot Hall of Famers. I mean, now Chris Jones and all these guys, all the Kansas City and Andy Reid, I really happen to like. I think they're very good at what they do. They are the best to play the sport. But I don't think my thing is that I don't think you need referees impacting a crucial playoff game. Now, I still think Houston could have lost, and I'm not denying that. But I just don't think that it's fair to the team because they're not playing on a level playing field.
Yeah, they definitely don't. Chiefs definitely don't need any more help with all the talent that they have. I don't. I mean, to an extent, I do blame the refs and being overly protective over Mahomes. I don't know if that's a directive from the NFL, which wouldn't shock me. I do think that there needs to be this level of accountability with reviews. I think that face masks should definitely be able to be reviewed. I think that late hits should be reviewed. I mean, you have targeting that's reviewable. Maybe that's in college football. I don't know if they call it targeting in the NFL right now, but it's if you're going to have so much gray area in a lot of these rules, then you need to be able to make them reviewable. And that I think that there was a huge impact on the game yesterday because of it. So I mean, ultimately, the NFL playoffs are probably more intriguing with the Chiefs in it still. I mean, if the Texans end up winning that game, I don't think Stroud has looked overly impressive throughout the season. So, I mean, you want to see the big names in the biggest games. I just don't want to see a game like that if it's, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and that's the backbreaker for a fan base that hasn't been able to come through because the refs are getting involved like that.
Yeah, and then there was a couple of other calls too. But again, I think Mahomes, they're moving on. But the second game, that was actually really, I would say I was surprised, but not too surprised because, I mean, the Commanders have been playing with house money right now. And Detroit, one thing that you saw throughout the season He said, this is a team that can score points. But this is also a team, I mean, when you saw the game that they played against Detroit, against Bills, there was a 48-44. And they've been scoring a lot of points, which is great. But if your defense cannot stop, and you knew that playoffs are all about defense. And going back to the first game, I think the Chiefs have like an amazing defense. And I knew that going in, and I think by the time I think they had more yards in the first half than the entire yards in the Kansas City Houston game. It was a track meet, it was a Madden type thing. Your thoughts initially? I mean, I think Jaden Daniels is a star. I mean, that we've established that, but he's also that good to see. Like Dan Quinn has put good people around him. They have a good defense, they have a good offense. Cliff Clinsbury calling the offense, and they've been really sharp on that. And they looked, and Jaden Daniels made some throws which were just incredible. So. And then their play calling was good. Their defense came up big. What is it? 5 turnovers in all. So I think Detroit, and then I think, some play calling was very suspect. You're down by 10, and Ben Johnson calls a wide receiver pass that became an interception. So, your thoughts on the how it went? Because I think I just shared mine.
Yeah, I'll go team by team here. Jaden Daniels is unbelievable. I don't think when you consider the contract that he's under, I don't think that there is a single player, maybe outside of Mahomes, because he's just different, but I don't think there's a single player that I would take over him besides Mahomes. I mean, when you consider that he's on a rookie contract and that he's already a top 5 quarterback in the league, the only people that I would consider putting over him are, as I said, Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, and then
Lamar.
probably Joe Burrow. And then it's Shaden Daniels. I mean, the pose that he's been able to show, ability to protect the ball and not turn the ball over is just really unbelievable. And the Commanders just took advantage of every mistake that the Lions made yesterday. And there were many mistakes. So I think that was honestly the story of the game is the Commanders showed the ability to execute and take advantage of, first of all, the Lions being extremely turnover prone. I mean, Jared Goff showed flashes of that throughout the season, and yesterday was no different. I think he had 2 picks, I want to say, and then you also had the trick play that ended up resulting in an interception. I mean, the Lions just they scored, like, obviously they scored plenty of points to win that game, considering the amount of injuries they had on defense and the way that the Commanders were able to cash in on those mistakes. I mean, that's you end up in this shootout where Commanders are able to pull that out. They're dangerous. I think there's no reason to think that the Commanders couldn't win next week against either the Eagles or the Rams. So they're playing with house money. They're dangerous. Everything seems to be clicking right now. They have a second receiver now outside of McCorin with De'Ami Brown that's
Brown.
stepping up. So they're dangerous. And they also have a good security blanket with Zach Ertz at tight ends. They're really clicking on all cylinders. I don't know what they would look like if you end up going against a really good defense. Jaden Daniels' leg seems to be neutralizing a lot of that. They're dangerous, so I'm really happy for them. I mean, both these fan bases. I feel just as bad for Lions fans as I am happy for Commanders fans. Now I do know more Commanders fans, so I'm very excited for them.
Both of
Yep,
us. Yes.
absolutely.
I don't know many Lions fans. So, but I think to your point, even not just on you talked about Jared Goff making 5 interceptions. There was another game where he did throw for 5 interceptions, and Detroit actually came back and won the game. I'm trying to remember which game it
Hmm.
was. Maybe it was not the Vikings game, maybe the one before that. But having said that, you just cannot do that in the playoffs. And then even simple things that, and then during the broadcast, Tom Brady actually referred to that. It was a 4th and 2, and the game was still very close. And right even before the play started, there were 12 men on the field. And there was no timeout called on that. And then Daniel snapped the ball. There was 12 men on the field, 5-yard penalty, 4th and 2, get to the 1st and goal. The next thing you know, the next couple of plays later, they go and score a touchdown. Now, those are some of these plays that you cannot do. Now, forget the offense on the offense side of things. I mean, I agree with Detroit. Their defense has been banged up. But having said that, they made a lot of mistakes that enabled the Commanders. And the Commanders played flawless football. And to your point, they're playing with house money. I think I heard one of the Eagles fans actually chime in yesterday during my text chain where he said, I am scared now. When I said, well, the first thing is you got to take care of the Rams first before you talk
Rams are
about.
no
And
joke
in
now.
fact, you know something?
They may pull that one out too. I'm excited for that game today.
Yeah, I think if the Rams win, think about this. If the Rams win, they actually have to travel to the East Coast to play the Commanders, I think. Or no, no. Is the Rams are 4 seed or five
Rams are a
seed?
division winner, so I think they would still have home
Oh, Rams
field.
are division winner, so
Yeah.
they have to go. The Commanders have to go there. Yes, right, right. I stand corrected. You're right. But I think if the Eagles win, I think the Commanders are going either way. They're going to the Eagles or they go to the LA. It'll be kind of fun with LA because Magic Johnson is the minority owner, I think, for the Commanders, and he also has you know established a base in LA for the Lakers and things like that. But I think that's where I see. And I want to quickly hit your thoughts on the two games that we have today.
Yeah.
We have the
One,
Eagles
one,
and
one,
Pat
one last
Eagles
one,
and
one last thought on the
yeah.
Lions. I do think that their window may have just closed yesterday. Losing, I mean, maybe it's a different story if you have an elite quarterback, but Ben Johnson is going to be gone next year. Aaron Glenn is probably going to be gone as well. Losing both those
Well,
coordinators.
not after the performance of the defense
Yeah,
yesterday. I
he may
don't
have
know.
played himself out of a head coaching job. Unfortunately, I don't know. I can't fault him too much. I think they had like 17 players in the IR, so that's just a tough situation. Either way, losing most likely both coordinators to head coaching jobs and having a lot of talent still, of course, from on both sides of the ball. But when you don't have that elite quarterback, and you're going to have a guy that's going to, I hopefully he doesn't try to overhaul the system or anything like that. But you saw a lot of creativity with Ben Johnson's offense, and I just don't know if they're going to be back in the NFC championship game anytime soon. I know they didn't get there this year, but I mean they were certainly favorites too. So it changes so quickly. I think I brought this up before, but like as a Falcons fan, you kind of tell yourself that after after we blew the Super Bowl, it's like, all right, well, we have Matt Ryan who's coming off an MVP season, and you have all of this talent around, and then Shanahan leaves, which he's honestly, I blame him more than anyone else for the Super Bowl collapse. But you have coordinators leave, and it starts to look different, and then all of a sudden, you're looking back and you're like, well, what happened? Why we didn't execute and capitalize in the time that we had, and it could be a hard reset, which will be a tough pill to swallow. Like I said, I feel really bad for Lions fans. Honestly, probably worse than if the Commanders had lost because they were not playing with house money. There was huge expectations and they just suffered.
And the Commanders have Super Bowl they have Super Bowl trophies, so it's not like
Yep.
they don't have. So I no, I think you made a very good point on that. I completely agree with what you just said. I think that the window closing can't be quantified because you have a lot of young quarterbacks in the league right now on the NFC side. Like you got Jaden Daniels, and again, I mean, everybody talked about Caleb Williams. I mean, I think with the right situation, I think he could bounce back. And then you got Jordan Love. I think again, all these guys are still hovering around, so they're not going anywhere. They're young and hungry. So I agree with that. So let's go to the quickly to the Eagles, Rams, and then the big blockbuster game in Highmark Highmark Stadium. Yeah, for some reason I always used to call it Orchard Park, but that's where the Bills used
Yeah.
to play. So let's start off with the first game. I think that's the Eagles and Rams. Again, when you look at the three of the four quarterbacks are mobile quarterbacks in this. I think Stafford is the only one who's not mobile quarterback. Your impression on? I know a lot of the Eagle fans I talk to, they're not big fans of Hurts because they think that he doesn't. All he does is win, but still, for some reason they don't like him. But what are your first impressions on who's going to pull this one out?
I kind of like the Rams here. I mean, you see, just with the way that they got everything clicking. I mean, you saw this with the college football playoff this year, where if you have all the right pieces clicking at the right time, you can be very dangerous. And I mean, I like the Rams front seven a lot. They're young, they're fast. I think they can keep up with Jalen Hurts. I think they can hold their own against Saquon. I mean, it's the Eagles' offensive line is a next level of talent for to kind of propel Saquon to the season that he's had. I think everything's clicking for the Rams. I feel like we're destined for a Commanders and Rams NFC Championship game. I trust McVay. I trust Stafford in the playoffs. In the Eagles, I just can't get the taste out of my mouth the way they ended the season last year.
Mhm.
And they haven't been overly like outside of Saquon, like they haven't been overly impressive this year. And so I feel like Sean McVay is going to come with a game plan to slow down Saquon, and if they're able to do that, I think they're going to win the game.
I mean, AJ Brown didn't have much of a game last year, and I'm actually clearly hoping if the Eagles don't win, AJ Brown has good tie-in with Mike Vrabel. So I'm very selfishly rooting for them to lose so that I can get AJ Brown to the Patriots to help Drake May. Again, that's a possibility. Again, that's my selfish motive for Eagles to lose. But I have good friends on both the Rams and Eagles side. But I do think that again, Rams caught fire. They started slow, they caught fire. And sometimes when you look at the trends, like you talked about, nothing to lose, Washington Commanders, Rams are in the same boat.
Yep.
I mean, they started, I think the Seattle Seahawks were primed to win the division, but Rams kept working on it and they started to win. And then they started to just completely, I think they demolished the Vikings. And then they've continued to impress me very well. And then, like you said, both Stafford and McVay won the Super Bowl. They got Cooper Cup. they got so many other weapons that they have in Kieran Williams. Running game.
They're healthy.
They're
Finally.
yeah, they're healthy right now. Yes, and I think that's a good point because one of the things that you always see in the playoffs is that the team that's the most healthiest is the one that's always will move forward. So I think I'm going to pick the. I think I'm going to pick the Rams too. I think it looks like you're going to be picking the Rams there as well. I was thinking about the Eagles, but I think the Rams are the real deal. So let's get down to the
I do think
final.
Sirianni may get fired if he loses this game too. He's got a lot of pressure to win, especially after, like I said, the way that they ended last year.
Funny you should mention about Sirianni because every Eagles fans I talk to can't stand him. It's like the Ohio State Ryan Day analogy of Eagles fans don't like Nick Sirianni and they want him fired.
He's flashy and he hasn't really backed it up. So I mean, he got them to the Super Bowl. I mean, I'll give him credit to an extent. He had great coordinators, and that's when I talk about Dan Campbell and the Lions, like that's what I'm talking about. Is you had a bad year last year for the Eagle, or sorry for the for the Eagles because they lost both of their coordinators, and so
Yes.
I don't know. I think he has to get it done this year, or it's going to start looking like he's never going to get over the hump.
I think you're 100% right. So now let's go to the last game, the team that will advance and face the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead. It's Lamar versus Josh, and it's lucky for the Chiefs that they don't have to play both these teams. They only have to play one team. But Lamar is playing as good. I think like we both talked about this, the MVP fatigue. I still think the winner of this game is going to be the MVP. That's the way I would see it. But where do you see this game going? I think Lamar, and not only that they are able to run the ball with Derrick Henry, I think Lamar's passing game has really improved. I think Zay Flowers is going to be playing, I think, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
believe so.
And going against Josh Allen, who's been playing as good as anybody's been playing this year. So your initial thoughts on that?
This game is my personal Super Bowl. There's no two teams that I would rather see play in the playoffs than the Ravens and the Bills. I'm gonna go ahead and say that whoever wins this game is. Well, I know I just picked the Chiefs. Oh, I will say this: I'm picking the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl just because I'm not gonna make that mistake. But every ounce of my being is going to tell me that whoever wins this game tonight is going to end up winning the Super Bowl. So it's very two conflicting statements, but yeah, no, I mean Lamar versus Josh. This is, I think, the game that everyone wanted to see. I kind of like the Ravens in this game. I think that Lamar should win the MVP. I think that having a guy like Derrick Henry to hand the ball off to 25 times, and then you also have the threat of Lamar's legs, it's going to be hard to stop. I think they'll figure out a way to get it done. I'll feel very bad for Bills fans because they just seem to be kind of churning their wheels with getting to the playoffs, having so much going for them, and then just facing just hitting a wall and facing the Chiefs or facing the Ravens or the Bengals, whoever it may be. And this. I mean, just to keep in perspective too. Like this was a rebuild year or I don't know if they call it rebuild, but retool year for the Bills. You have a bunch of guys that they have very young weapons. Like Kincaid is a second year player, Keon Coleman's a rookie, Shakir's really come into his own this year. So they have a lot of weapons on offense now that are really promising. But I just kind of get the sense that this Ravens team and the way that they're able to move the ball on the ground and not have to rely too much on, like for the Bills case, they have to rely very heavily on Allen, and James Cook is a great player, but I don't think you're going to hand the ball off to him 25 times today. I mean, it's as close. I will say this: it's as close to the toss up as you could possibly get for a playoff match. I'm going to go pick with the Ravens. So I want to be slightly opinionated on this, but you know, this is going to be a close game. I don't see this being more than a one touchdown game. So I'll say that I'll go ahead and say that the Ravens will win this game. I think it'll be high scoring. So I'll go ahead and say that the Ravens will win this game. We'll go
31-20. Okay. I like your pick. And I think the best team to beat the Chiefs are the Ravens. I think because they've already played earlier this. I think the first game of the season came down to that. I remember that toe touch on the end zone that the Ravens. It was a tied the game. The Ravens definitely must be inching for that rematch. And although Lamar has not done great against Mahomes in the playoffs, but I think the Ravens give the Chiefs, or I would say they give the best shot to upset the Chiefs. That would be my thing. But having said that, being in the division as Josh Allen, as a Patriots fan, and I've seen Josh a lot, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but I think I've been all year. I've been saying that I actually root for Josh Allen because I really think he comes off as he kind of puts the team on his shoulders, takes them to wherever they need to go, somehow win the game, takes the hits. I think your assessment on his offensive weapons are bang on. I do think that the one thing that will really worry me if I'm a Bills fan is the defense, which, from a standpoint of Ravens, with the good running game and the fact that they do have a good passing attack too, you have Mark Andrews and you got Zay Flowers. I think the Ravens are too much. But having said all of that, I think I'm going to go because I feel very poor for the Bills fans because they've been like, they've lost 4 Super Bowls, and they, again, just like we just talked about the Commanders and the Lions, I'm actually going to root for the Bills to win this game. And I do think that, they can go toe to toe with Mahomes um, in Arrowhead, but I still think the Ravens give the best chance to someone to beat the Chiefs. But I'm going to go with the Bills just because I think I want Josh to kind of prevail and go to the AFC Championship.
yeah.
It's even as a Patriots fan, I have to say I'm rooting for
I
Josh
feel like
Allen.
there's a similar dynamic in the NFC North with the Lions and like the Packers and the Bears and and then the Lions. Like there's a
Mhm.
rivalry there because it's the divisional round. It's a divisional matchup, but then at the same time you respect the team so much and you respect like what Dan Campbell's been doing with the Lions and you respect what Josh Allen is able to do with the Bills. I no one will fault you. Now when the Patriots get competitive again, then I'm sure that will all go away very
Oh
quick.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I want once Drake May and Rabel start, competing, and I hope they can compete in 2 years. And I think then, in that case, then I have to root against the Bills at the time because I do want, obviously, Drake May to beat Josh Allen. But I think that's where we are. I think we agree on one, the Rams, and of course my Rams friend is going to call me for a jinx, although I won't tell him about this. And then I think you go with the Ravens, and I think you may be right, but I'm rooting for the Bills
Yeah.
to prevail
Yeah,
here
I'll be
to
happy
go to
with
the
both
AFC.
fan bases. I mean, I I'll probably be leaning a little bit toward the Bills, because I just don't have a rooting interest outside of the fact that I want a good game. And I will say this, I feel like both college football and the NFL this year as a whole, there has not been like a single moment or game that I feel like I'm going to remember 10 years from now, if you know what I mean. So I really hope, on paper at least, this is the one of the first games this year that I could really see that being a possibility. That we may actually see
Hmm.
an all-time classic game just with the way that both these teams are playing right now, the way that they stack up and how 50-50 it looks on paper. I'm just hoping I'm hoping for a great game, and I'm optimistic that we'll get it.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Right now, for the Chiefs, the strongest competition is going to come from the Ravens or the Bills. I don't see any of the NFC teams left right now between the Commanders, Rams, and Eagles competing
I will
against the
say
Chiefs.
if
I
the
mean,
Commanders and Chiefs play in the Super Bowl, you will not. I always love the maps that you see before. You saw with Ohio State and Notre
yes,
Dame.
I know when the Patriots were playing, I know how the
Yeah,
maps
oh
work.
yeah,
It was
it's like the little bubble in the Northeast where it's like these are the fans that or states that are rooting for the Patriots, and then the entire rest of the map is the other color. So yeah, you will see that in full force if we have the Chiefs and the Commanders, just as you're seeing with Ohio State, where Ohio is the only team rooting for Ohio State and everyone else is cheering for Notre Dame.
well. I think it's the same with Chiefs versus any team. I think the rest of the country is going to root for any other team that's playing against the
We've gotten to
Chiefs.
that point.
I mean, I have no doubt about it. Just this little spot. I think when the Patriots played, at least there's 6 New England states were rooting for the Patriots, and then the rest of the country was rooting against the
If it was
Patriots.
the Eagles, I think there's enough Cowboys fans that hate the Eagles in Texas to where they may pull for the Chiefs. But we're definitely getting to that point. I try, and I did this with Brady. I'm trying to appreciate greatness. It makes it really tough when you have games like yesterday where the refs get involved. But the Chiefs have gotten to that point. I wouldn't. I think it will be cool if they do three-peat. It'll be cool because 20 years from now they'll be the one team that's done that, and you'll be able to say that you watch them and all of that. But taking it game by game, it's hard to have that perspective, and I do find myself rooting against the Chiefs pretty heavily now every game.
Selfishly, I don't want that. Selfishly, I want it to be the same because I think the Patriots have done
Yep.
back to back. They could not do the three-peat, and I know they've lost. I think the Chiefs have actually gone further than the Patriots. I think in terms of even the Patriots when they won 2 in a row. The third, when they were going for the three-peat, they lost in the divisional round. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they didn't go to a conference championship. So the Chiefs have already gone. History's already been made. They've already gone further than that. But that's where we are, and then we'll compare our notes, and I'm sure we'll be texting each other during these games. So I've been looking forward to both the NFL games and one tomorrow night, and let's hope for the
Yep,
best.
absolutely.
And
Root for
thanks
good
again,
football. That's all I
Josh.
want. Good games.
Root for good football, and have a good rest of the football day and football evening, and tomorrow too.
Yep.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Ray. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Primo will be back soon.